Hello, everyone. My name's Hardeep Matharu. I am the head of business growth in Asia and a senior workstyle consultant with Veldhoen Company. In the last video, I talked about the changes in the way that people work and the way that hybrid has impacted that in general. But this time I'd like to talk about the latest developments in activity-based working. Activity-based working is, of course, a flexible working style that enables people to work in the place that works for them, when they want and how they want. So while the focus in Japan tends to be about the office in particular, it's important as well to have an approach that rethinks not just the way that we work itself, but also everything that supports us, the physical, the virtual, as well as the behavioral environment that we work in. So what are some of the notable post-pandemic corporate developments that we see at Veldhoen Company? And what do we hear from consultants working in the other regions? So of course, Veldhoen Company is globally spread. We have offices in Europe, we have offices in Australia, and we have offices in the US. And what we found really is that the inquiries regarding flexible work have naturally been increasing globally since the pandemic has come along. And activity-based working has particularly been seen as one of the great solutions to help organizations create more effective work environments. A key trend as well that hybrid work has forced upon organizations is the reduction in human connection. In particular, there's been a huge increase in the number of employees that are leaving their jobs to a decreased sense of belonging. This has led to a more collaborative environment needed in the office. As has been mentioned, however, in our Australian white paper, we have found that workers do have their own preferences for the activities that they perform within the office. So it's important for organizations globally to think about what is needed to cater physically for the needs of the employees. If it is that your employee groups require more space for collaboration, very important that the physical environment will be catering for it, as well as those on the opposite side. If individual space is needed, indeed, more individual space should be provided too. So what kind of inquiries are we receiving from customers in the Asian region? So until now, activity-based working has been very much focused upon from the perspective of the physical office environment, but it's been gradually more and more understood as an essential approach to the way that we work. It isn't where you work, it's the way that we work. As such, the entry point previously being mostly about office renewal consultations, we're actually seeing more of a trend towards clients needing to look at the way that we work and changing the way that we work from a human resources perspective, rather than simply about the physical space itself. On top of that, there's two main motives for inquiries, which includes the awareness on the issue of changing the way that we work. Again, specifically in Japan, one key requirement or key inquiry has been about reviewing work styles and the office as a realistic response to the changes that have already happened, including the current hybrid work environment, as well as the suitability of that for the working style of the organization. That's an inquiry that we often hear about from the general affairs and facilities management staff of organizations. The other side regarding this changing of the way we work, it is really about where we've got people thinking about that they changed to the operations and business processes needed to address the drastically changing market environment that we're facing now. A big question that comes along is how can we change our office spaces on top of our processes to cater for all of those changes that are going on all at once. We're often asked about this type of issue when we're talking about also increasing our sense of competitiveness, primarily in some of the industries regarding, say, manufacturing, where we have a lot of R&D researchers coming who are curious about how they can handle this process improvement alongside the way they work. Another major inquiry area that we receive is where we're having employees returning to the office. So it's very common, for example, in startups where they are working in a hybrid way, but it's more important that they are physically present with one another. And so it's been quite a big requirement to figure out how we can encourage people back to the office more effectively. So in some cases, what we will often do is to gain a better understanding of the types of situation that workers require to use the office for. So for example, while remote working has gained a lot of traction, the late millennials and Gen Z, they might have found that they are actually a demographic that would prefer to work more in the office. Many companies have also heard from younger workers, again, particularly those Gen Z, that they do not have strong relationships with people within the company, primarily outside of their team, because we shifted quickly to hybrid working so shortly after they may have joined the organization. As such, they may have want to be building more internal networks, and going to the office to seek opportunities to connect with others is a great way to do so. In terms of income as well, younger people are often finding that it's difficult to spend their money on their home environment, things like having all of the office space dedicated, as well as having the equipment you need to work effectively from home. We often hear very frank comments from the younger folks that actually they would like to have a more efficient work environment in the office rather than rely on their home environment. So in terms of activity, we note that the youth generation is characterized a little bit more by the need for both intensive work as well as collaboration in the office environment. So what are the characteristics of the projects that we do in Japan as compared to other regions? So when Veldhoen Company collaborates in other countries, we sometimes work with the people departments to discuss how we may improve the overall employee experience. However, in Japan, we tend to find that there's a little bit more of a focus to really look more at the office and the facilities. As a result, we're often talking more with the general affairs departments in Japan. While they have advanced knowledge of office facilities and equipment, we sometimes also work with them to help improve their knowledge of human behavior and the other aspects of work styles, which are unrelated to the physical environment. So while the project team will be listening carefully to the employees and incorporate their needs and opinions into the work style strategy, there are some times when it's not enough to be able to satisfy them or to realize a future work style that the company is aiming for. As such, there are times when it's necessary for our V&C consultants to take the lead while also listening to the employee's voice. A slightly more directed approach in Japan. Indeed, as well, Japan is a country which has got more of a top-down organization culture as compared to the other regions we work in. There are many companies that work closely with workers to get detailed ideas of their work styles. And it is also important for us to listen more to the opinions as they move forward with projects. We do try to understand this more as we work on our projects in Japan, but we do note that this top-down culture changes the way that we interact with employees within the organization itself. So now that hybrid working has become the norm due to COVID-19, what is the behavior change required and what's different as compared to pre-pandemic? So first, a change in consciousness must come before a change in behavior. To change the way that we work, where we used to go to the office and somehow get our work done, and then to rethink that about how we can be most productive in a hybrid work environment is to understand what changes have really taken place. So what tasks and activities are now involved in my work? What kind of environment do I need to perform my tasks most effectively? Elements about flexibility regarding the times of day. What's most conducive for me? Do I collaborate more in the morning as opposed to the afternoon? A lot of these points are issues that we didn't think about before, but it's important for us to think about now. So in terms of changing our attitudes, it's also important to consider not just how we as an individual work, we also need to consider how we work with our colleagues, with our team. So listening to the ideal work styles and preferences of our team members whom we work with and rely upon is also very helpful when it comes to making that change for ourselves. So as hybrid work increases the opportunities we have to work apart, how often and how should we as a team remain connected with one another? Can we do things online? Can we do things more face-to-face? All of these are questions that we need to consider when we're thinking about making a change. So while these questions may be unfamiliar to many of us, we do believe that in behavioral change will result from identifying and verbalizing the actions and activities that we do naturally in the office without awareness, and then building a common understanding and a practice as a team consensus. One of the things that we do with our clients very regularly is to help them to define team agreements. So to align more on how a team itself will operate, this is a hugely important part of driving change. And it helps people to ensure they're on the same page with each other as we navigate quite a huge amount of change with one another. So what is some advice that we would be giving for Japanese organizations who might be considering an activity-based working implementation? So some workers may be afraid of change. When they hear about new ways of working or activity-based working, it may sound new and scary and potentially unimaginable because they've not worked in a way like that before. However, what we do through the work that we perform on an implementation is to properly understand what employees themselves are actually doing from the perspective of activity. Therefore, to take a step from that is to reorganize the ways of working, including the behavioral environment, the technology, as well as the physical space that will cater for that. So it's very important to help people understand that while this is a change that comes in that's different, it's designed to help them work more effectively. That tends to be an easier way for people to accept change if they can understand what is in it for them. With the unique approach and experience that we've accumulated over the past 30 years, we can help you to understand your own working style and then take a step further by building your future vision of how you want to work in the future. This is why our corporate message is to create a better world of work, which we promote together alongside our clients. So if you have any doubts about the way that your future of work is going, we would love to hear from and support you. Thank you very much.